The time is 10:15. Sorry, 10:15 a.m. We're back on the record.
Mr. Borelli, I asked you previously at the beginning if you had reviewed any documents to prepare for your deposition. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And did any of the documents that you reviewed refresh your recollection about your time at Mallinckrodt?
Somewhat, but it was a long time ago.
And which documents that you recall refreshed your recollection about your employment at Mallinckrodt?
Again, I will object on attorney-client and work product grounds and instruct the witness not to identify any specific documents discussed with counsel.
And for the documents that refreshed your recollection, there were some documents that refreshed your recollection, correct?
Yes, from seeing my name on an email, but I don't remember the body of the email at all.
And so when you saw the body of the email, that refreshed your recollection about the subject matter of the email, right?
Object to the form.
You can answer.
I guess so.
And so can you please generally describe any document that when you read the document, it refreshed your recollection of your employment at Mallinckrodt?
Same instruction not to identify any specific documents discussed with counsel.
Can you ask that again?
Can you read the question back, please?
Can you please generally describe any document that when you read the document, it refreshed your recollection of your employment at Mallinckrodt?
Same instruction not to identify any specific documents selected and discussed with counsel.
And counsel, just so I understand, are you instructing him not to answer a question asking him to describe documents that refreshed his recollection?
Refresh recollection is an evidentiary issue. It doesn't implicate or abrogate the attorney-client or work product privilege. So that is my instruction, not to identify any specific documents compiled, selected, and discussed with counsel.
And I disagree with your characterization of the law and believe it's inappropriate to instruct the witness not to answer questions about documents that refreshed his recollection. So we can move on, but we'll hold that as an issue that may require Mr. Borelli to come back again and answer more questions. In your earlier testimony, we talked about your phone, and you indicated that you did use text messaging with customers. Do you recall how frequently that occurred?
I don't.
And do you recall if your phone was provided to you by Mallinckrodt or if it was a personal phone?
I don't remember. I don't want to assume, but I'll assume here that I think it was a personal, but I don't remember specifically.
Counsel, if you could please inquire as to whether Mr. Borelli's phone was provided by Mallinckrodt, and if so, ensure that that text messages have been searched and, if responsive, produced.
My understanding is that Mallinckrodt did not provide a phone to Mr. Borelli, but we'll take that under advisement and confirm that.
Thank you. When you were selling coffee for Sara Lee, do you recall what your largest selling product was?
I do not.
Mr. Borelli, you understand that opioids are controlled substances, correct?
Yes.
And you understand that opioids are narcotics, is that correct?
Yes.
And you are aware that the manufacturer and distribution of narcotics must comply with the Controlled Substances Act?
Yes.
And I take it that you also understand that the Controlled Substances Act requires persons who handle controlled substances to register with the DEA?
Can you say that again, please? I'm sorry.
Sure. You understand that the Controlled Substances Act requires persons who handle controlled substances to register with the DEA.
So I'm not so in tune with the Controlled Substances Act to know that specific piece.
Do you know whether people who are involved in the business of manufacturing and selling and distributing controlled substances have to have a DEA registration to do so?
Yes.
You understand that?
Yes.
And drug manufacturers are among the entities that must register with the DEA in order to sell narcotics, correct?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the concept of the closed system of controlled substance distribution? Do you know what that means?
I do not.
You do know, however, that if you are not a registrant under the Controlled Substances Act, you are not allowed to distribute controlled substances, correct?
Yes. That's an assumption.
And if you are a registrant with the DEA, you must comply with the requirements as set forth by the DEA for the distribution, manufacture, or dispensing of controlled substances,
Okay.
correct?
Yes.
So, for example, you, Victor Borelli, can't just decide to send a friend opioids just because Mallinckrodt is a registrant under the DEA, correct?
Correct.
You must at all times comply with the requirements of the DEA registration, right?
Yes.
And it would be illegal to distribute controlled substances in a manner that is not authorized by a DEA registration, right?
I'm assuming you're right.
So if you, for example, distributed controlled substances to an acquaintance, that would be illegal under the DEA registration that Mallinckrodt has, correct?
I don't think so.
And so if a friend of a friend calls you and says, hey, Victor, can you send me 50 bottles of OxyContin to my favorite pharmacy, that would be illegal, correct?
I wouldn't send. Me send? I don't send. I don't package up the product and send it. So I'm not. Can you ask that again?
So that would be illegal if you did that, correct?
If I sent product to a pharmacy,
Right.
I would imagine so.
Okay. And so if a friend of a friend called you and said, hey, can you tell one of your distributor clients to send me 50 bottles of OxyContin, that also would be illegal, correct?
I'm just not following the question. I'm sorry. It's not part of the business practice. I'm just not following the question.
Okay. If a
Sorry
friend
about that.
of a friend called you and said, Victor, can you please tell one of your customers to send 50 bottles of OxyContin for my use at my favorite pharmacy, that would not be consistent with your DEA registration. Is that correct? With Mallinckrodt's DEA registration.
Object to the form. Go ahead.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that.
That's not something you would ever do.
That's not what I said. I said I don't know the answer to what you're asking. If McKesson was calling on an account and I spoke to a McKesson manager to highlight an out-of-stock situation, I don't remember doing that either, but I might. But I'm not shipping. I'm not packaging up product and shipping it to a pharmacy.
I understand, but going back to what I was asking you, if a friend of a friend contacted you and said, Victor, can you please ask one of your distributor customers to send me 50 bottles of OxyContin to my favorite pharmacy, that would be illegal, correct?
Object to the form.
Kind of going around here and semantic.
Is that something that you would do?
Object to the form.
If there's an out of stock in the marketplace, I don't know. I might.
I'm not asking for if it's an out of stock in the marketplace. I'm asking you if a friend of a friend called you and said, Victor, will you please ask one of your distributor customers to send me 50 bottles of OxyContin to my favorite pharmacy? I'm asking you, is that something that you would do or not?
Object to the form.
I don't know the answer to that. I might if there's an out of stock at that pharmacy that patients need that product.
Is that
If that's a registered, if it's a registered pharmacy with a active DEA license, and there's an out of stock or there's a need, I don't know if I would or wouldn't, but I don't see what's the I don't know if I would or wouldn't, but I don't see if I did. I don't believe that's wrong if there's a need at that location for patients.
So you believe that Mallinckrodt's DEA registration allows you to receive a request from a friend of a friend to ask a customer to send OxyContin to your friend of friend's favorite pharmacy?
Object to
That
the form.
Mallinckrodt could do that consistent with its DEA registration?
Object to the form.
Or you just don't know?
Perhaps I'm just not following your question properly, but in the example I shared with you a moment ago, I don't see anything wrong with that from a DEA registered organization to a to a pharmacy with a DEA license if there's no product availability from other manufacturers. And again, Mallinckrodt's not the only manufacturer on this product. So if there's out of stocks and Mallinckrodt has an opportunity, I might, but only from a DEA registered organization to a DEA registered pharmacy.
So you can think of reasons to do that if that pharmacy is out of stock.
Object to the form.
That could be one of the reasons.
Can you think of any other reasons?
I could. Patient preference. Right? Patient preference is another.
So you, the director of sales at Mallinckrodt, takes into account patient preference when making a decision to send narcotics to a pharmacy?
Object to the form.
I think you put words in my mouth there. If a patient only likes atenolol with a blue color to it, they want that atenolol with a blue color oval shape. We're going down a road here that I'm not sure what you're asking, so I'm sharing with you about a registered organization to a registered pharmacy. And then I think you're asking it another way, but I'm just sharing my thoughts. I don't see anything wrong with that with situations and circumstances prevail.
So you don't think there's anything wrong with a friend of a friend calling you and asking you to have a distributor client of yours send OxyContin to a pharmacy?
Object to the form.
And it depends, and I've shared the answer, my thoughts with you already, right? Depends on the circumstance.
Is that something that happened a lot? Friends of friends would call you and ask you to send narcotics places?
Object to the form.
I don't believe so.
Okay. Do you recall it ever happening?
I don't believe so, but it may have. But again, if there's quota issues out in the marketplace, if there's out of stocks issues in the marketplace by my competitors, there's so many things that can play into that question and that situation. So I don't know.
Now you understand that the Controlled Substances Act requires Mallinckrodt to have a system of controls to prevent diversion, correct?
I believe so.
And what is diversion?
I'm gonna think there's many forms of diversion.
Well, describe diversion as best you can.
If a truck, I think when I was at Mallinckrodt, a truck of Watson, a competitor, a product was stolen. I think that's a form of diversion. I think if a pharmacy is robbed and they take medicine, I think that's going to be I think it's a form of either abuse or diversion. So if a Federal Express site is robbed, I think that could be a form of diversion. So,
If a dispensing physician prescribes opioids for reasons other than medical necessity, is that diversion?
Was there a prescription?
Whether there is or not, if a dispensing physician prescribes opioids for reasons other than medical necessity, is that diversion?
Was there a prescription?
So are you saying that if there's a prescription prescribing for reasons that are not medical necessity is not diversion?
Object to the form.
You can't put words in my mouth.
Well, I'm asking you to explain. Explain as best you can.
I am doing that, right? I'm trying my best here.
Okay.
And I asked if there was a prescription. If there's a prescription, we manufacture product, ship it to a wholesaler who then ships it to a pharmacy, an independent pharmacy, a chain pharmacy, whatever. Then it is dispensed to a patient who comes in with a prescription written by a doctor. There's a lot of steps here. So you're asking something. So if there's a prescription, that person was viewed by a doctor, and then the pharmacist at the location is reviewing that patient as well. You know how far removed I am from that question, so I can't answer it.
Well, so are you saying that if there's a pharmacist involved and a doctor wrote a prescription, that whatever happens to that opioid cannot be diversion?
Object to the form.
When did I say that?
I'm asking you that. Is that your understanding?
Object to the form.
Can you ask that again then?
Could you please read back the question?
So are you saying that if there's a pharmacist involved and a doctor wrote a prescription, that whatever happens to that opioid cannot be diversion?
I don't know the answer to that, right? How do I know what that patient is doing? Selling it, using it improperly? You're asking somebody who's so far removed from that end unit question that it's a tough one to answer.
Can you answer the question or not?
Can you ask it again?
So are you saying that if there's a pharmacist involved and a doctor wrote a prescription, that whatever happens to that opioid cannot be diversion?
Object to the form.
So it's meant for medicinal purposes. In that fashion and form, it's not, in my humble opinion, it's not going to be diverted. Can it be? I don't know.
In the trainings that you received at Mallinckrodt, did you receive any trainings on what constitutes diversion?
I don't remember.
Is it possible for a distributor that you supply pills to engage in diversion?
Do you mean shipped to a location without a DEA license?
Or any type of diversion? Is that something that you ever evaluated, whether a distributor client was engaged in diversion?
Evaluated? No.
Do you understand that the Controlled Substances Act also required Mallinckrodt to have a suspicious order monitoring system?
I shared before, I don't know the specifics about that act, but Mallinckrodt did have that in place.
And Describe, if you can, your understanding of how the suspicious order monitoring system worked at Mallinckrodt.
I was in the sales department. I don't know. I don't know how they conducted themselves. There are people specific at Mallinckrodt that were in that department. It's probably best to ask what their roles and responsibilities were.
So you're saying you weren't involved at all in the suspicious order monitoring process at Mallinckrodt?
In the actual process to evaluate customers, not so much. Did I receive calls or emails from folks in that department at Mallinckrodt? Yes.
And so what types of things would that department ask you?
To arrange meetings with customers about units ordered.
Did you have an understanding of what kinds of things the suspicious order monitoring department was looking for?
Not so much.
Okay, so you just sold the pills to distributors, and that was kind of the end of your involvement.
I reject to the form.
So no, it doesn't end there. Right? I shared before about customer service and supply and quota conversations. There's a number of things that go into the company sales and the customer and the wholesaler or distributor. Yeah.
But your job didn't involve helping Mallinckrodt identify suspicious orders.
Not specifically.
In what way did it?
Well, as a salesperson, I was on the road quite a bit, so visiting with customers and seeing their operation. It's part of my role.
And when you were visiting customers and seeing their operation, were you evaluating whether they were engaged in shipping suspicious orders?
Not that specific point, no.
Okay. Did you try and get a sense of whether your customers were engaged in diversion?
I think I tried to get a sense of the customer.
But what does that mean?
I don't know. If you visit a customer's office, you can see if they're diverting the product. I don't know if you can do that. I don't know if that's possible.
Did you try to do that? Did you try to understand your customer to know whether they were engaged in diversion?
Understand the customer, yes. The diversion piece, once they ship it, God bless, there's 50 states that they ship it to. So, no.
So you're saying you had no visibility after you sold pills to the distributor, that's where your visibility stopped on what happened to those pills?
Yeah.
Now you do understand that Mallinckrodt had a legal duty to identify and stop suspicious orders to its distributor clients, right?
I object to the form.
You can answer.
I believe so.
And is it also your understanding that Mallinckrodt had a duty to identify suspicious sales by its distributor customers to their downstream clients?
Object to the form.
I don't see where the wholesaler ships to, and even when we ship to a chain of stores, I don't see what store that goes to. And so if we sell to a Walgreens distribution center, and I'm making this up, Tempe, Arizona, I don't know if product mine and all other vendors they do business with, I don't know where that goes, to what store in Arizona or in California or in New Mexico. I don't know.
Do you understand that the purpose of the closed system for opioid distribution and the regulations that go with it is to minimize theft and diversion of controlled substances?
I believe so.
And if a registrant fails to satisfy its obligations under the Controlled Substances Act, that could result in controlled substances being diverted, right?
Object to the form.
Can you explain that a bit more for me?
If a registrant, such as Mallinckrodt, distributes to distributors without regard to what that distributor is going to do with the pills it's buying from Mallinckrodt, that could contribute to diversion, correct?
Object to the form.
Can you answer?
You said without regard. I don't know if Mallinckrodt did that.
Oh, but I'm asking if they did.
I don't
If
believe
that
it.
were to occur, that would be a problem, right? Because that would increase the risk of diversion.
Object to the form.
I mean, if they shipped to somebody without a DEA license?
If they ship,
I'm just trying to follow you.
Yeah, I understand. If they ship to a distributor who Mallinckrodt was aware recklessly dispensed to downstream customers, recklessly shipped to downstream customers, that would increase the risk of diversion, right?
Object to the form.
If Mallinckrodt shipped to somebody without a DEA license, I would think that would be a reckless scenario. If they if they ship to somebody with a DEA license who serviced a patient in need with a prescription from a doctor, I don't think that's reckless. That's just how I think.
Would you agree that diversion contributes to drug abuse and addiction?
Object to the form.
There are a lot of things that tie into that.
Is diversion one of them?
Could
Object to the form. Go ahead.
be.
Could be, or it is.
Object to the form.
Could be.
Is there an opioid crisis in this country?
That's a pretty broad brush statement, man. I think there is, from illegal and legally manufactured products. It's a broad brush statement.
Have you heard of the expression the opioid epidemic?
I have.
And you understand that there is an ongoing opioid epidemic in this country?
Yes.
And when did you learn that there was an opioid epidemic in this country?
I think it's been on the news and articles. So from reading, and I don't know when I read articles or see articles, or so it's ongoing.
And of course, you were involved in the sale of opioids, right?
Legally manufactured, as well as other molecules. Yes.
Okay. And during the time that you were selling opioids, were you aware there was an opioid epidemic?
When you speak of opioids, I think of heroin, I think of crack, I think of so many things that are all part of the epidemic. And I think that's a part of the epidemic. So I'm sorry, just wanted to share.
Okay. But when you were selling opioids, prescription opioids, OxyContin, for example, did you know there was an opioid epidemic going on?
I believe so.
And do you recall when you realized there was an opioid epidemic?
Well, I probably realized that much sooner than when I worked at Mallinckrodt.
Okay, so prior to what year?
I started with Mallinckrodt in 2005.
Okay, so when you started, you already knew there was an opioid epidemic in this country.
I believe so.
Did you evaluate the extent to which the opioid epidemic was impacted let's strike that. Did you evaluate the extent to which the opioid epidemic impacted the communities that were included in your sales region for Mallinckrodt?
No.
Did you investigate the extent to which pills manufactured by Mallinckrodt contributed to the opioid epidemic?
Object to the form.
Can you ask that again?
Could you read it back, please?
Did you investigate the extent to which pills manufactured by Mallinckrodt contributed to the opioid epidemic?
Object to the form.
Perhaps at times.
Okay. Describe that.
From things you read, from things you hear, from things you listen to, understanding the DEA quotas assigned to schedule narcotic companies, how much quota is allocated. I mean, there's a lot of different things that come into that.
Okay, and you took those things into account how?
Just as an understanding of how the, I don't know if it's the process for the closed system, but they're all part of it.
Okay. Did you evaluate whether particular types of pills manufactured by Mallinckrodt were prone to abuse or diversion?
Did I evaluate? I don't believe so.
And when you were selling opioid products for Mallinckrodt, were you aware that Oxy 15 and 30 milligram tablets were the most widely abused and diverted prescription opioids?
Object to the form.
I did not know they were most widely used and abused. I did not know that.
That's news to you?
I said I didn't know. I did not know that is the most widely abused.
Did you know that your distributor clients purchased enormous quantities of Oxy 15 and 30?
They're servicing the whole country, and there's not a warehouse full of product that we just make that they can fill and sell. There's a finite amount of product that's assigned to us and our 25 competitors.
I'm going to ask my question again and see if I understand your answer. Did you know that your distributor clients purchased enormous quantities of Oxy 15 and 30? Yes or no?
Object to the form.
It's not a yes or no answer. I think I shared just now that they service 50 states and Puerto Rico. I don't know how much Cardinal needs every day, every week, every month.
Mr. Borelli, you knew how much Oxy 15 and 30 your clients were buying, correct?
For the most part, yes.
And you knew they were buying a lot, correct?
A lot is a relative term. A lot to what? For history or the United States needs?
How about relative to what they were buying before? The amount they were buying was increasing significantly, correct?
Object to the form.
Again, you'd have to show me by molecule my sales. You showed me a broad brush number in dollars, and you didn't talk about the margin side. But in dollars, there were customers that were up, and there were customers that were down. but I don't know the molecules that were up. I don't know the molecules that were down.
Just sitting here today, you just can't recall any trends with Oxy 15 and 30 in your clients. Is that what you're saying?
Well, you showed sales dollars that went up. Was it specific and only to Oxy 15 and 30? I don't believe so.
Again, and we'll get into more specific documents, but as you sit here today, there aren't any trends with Oxy 15 and 30 in the time period where your bonuses were very large that you recall.
Object to the form.
Trends meaning sales were increasing?
Correct.
Sales were increasing.
And you were aware of that?
That sales were increasing? For my territory? Okay, I guess so. I'd like to chime in for a second if I could. If sales increase here, the sales will decrease here because there's just a finite amount of product. So if Cardinal's sales are increasing, McKesson's sales may be decreasing for Mallinckrodt. They buy from 25, I'm not even sure how many other vendors they purchase from. So I don't know if sales are increasing on a grand 50-state scale. I don't know.
But you do know whether they were increasing in certain areas, right?
Object to
It's
the
not
form.
news to you that the sale of Oxy in Florida was increasing significantly during the time that you were selling Oxy to your distributor clients, right?
Was it I don't know if it's I don't know if it's increasing in quantity year over year. If our sales are up and someone else's sales are down, because it's allocated by the DEA. And conversely, if Watson's sales are going up, somebody else's sales will be going down. And it could be based on quota, it could be based on supply. There's a lot of things that go into that.
Mr. Borelli, you understand that over time, during the time where the opioid epidemic was ongoing, which you said you knew about, overall the amount of opioids being sold in this country increased year over year, right?
Object to the form.
That's not news to you.
I knew about the epidemic. I shared that with you. I don't know overall sales for that item in the country. And I don't know if Mallinckrodt's sales were higher year over year. Because again, if I pick up sales, someone may have a decline.
Can you explain to me what a chargeback is?
There was a specific chargeback organization at Mallinckrodt, and it's a practice used in the pharmaceutical industry to get to a contract price.
Let me try and understand. Chargeback payments are made by Mallinckrodt to distributor clients, correct?
That's correct.
And why does Mallinckrodt pay distributor clients chargebacks?
Well, they only would allocate a chargeback payment when the wholesaler sells it to a pharmacy or a hospital.
And isn't the idea if the Mallinckrodt distributor customer sells to its downstream customer at a price lower than the price that distributor purchased from Mallinckrodt would make up the difference with the chargeback?
I believe again, there's a department for chargebacks at Mallinckrodt, so I believe that the chargeback, was in place to get to a contract price.
Right. The contract price is the price at which the drug was purchased from Mallinckrodt.
I'm sorry?
Tell me what you mean by contract price.
An agreed upon price that the that the wholesaler would pay for any molecule.
Okay. And so if the customer distributor sold to a downstream customer at a price lower than the contract price, Mallinckrodt would then pay a chargeback to the distributor to get the distributor to the contract price. Is that right?
I believe so, but you're better off. There's a chargeback team in place, so you're probably better off talking to the folks who managed and worked in that department. But I believe so.
That's your understanding.
It's my understanding.
And was there competition among manufacturers over the amount of the chargeback payments that were being paid to wholesalers?
I can't speak to how other companies went to market.
And would you agree that the chargeback payment to a distributor provides that distributor with an incentive to sell Mallinckrodt's products to its downstream customers?
I don't believe it's an incentive to sell. It's not an incentive. It's to get them to a contract price that they can then sell it to a customer, one of their pharmacies or hospitals. Yeah.
So that contract price becomes kind of a guarantee when the chargeback is taken into account, right?
Yes, I don't know if I've never used that word with chargeback, so I think it's best to speak to the folks in the chargeback group or department.
And wholesale distributor clients are more likely to purchase product from Mallinckrodt if they know that if they sell that product below the contract price, Mallinckrodt will make them whole, right?
Object to the form.
I'm not following you because I don't know how they would sell it below, because they would buy it from us and they sold it to a customer, pharmacy. If they sold it below the contract price, then they would be losing money.
And then they would get a chargeback, right?
The chargeback gets them to the contract. So if it was $100 wholesale acquisition cost and the contract was at $50, there's a $50 chargeback. If they sold it at $40, they'd go out of business, I would believe, soon.
I'm sorry.
I don't
to
know
pause.
the specifics.
Oh. Sorry. The real time was lagging. Yeah, it's back up to. It's caught up. Thanks.
And those are I'm just sharing easy numbers.
Right. Again, I want to make sure I understand. You have a distributor. They negotiate a contract price with Mallinckrodt.
Yeah.
The distributor sells to a downstream customer at a price that's lower than the contract price. Mallinckrodt then pays money to the distributor to get them to the contract price, so they don't lose money on that sale, right?
No, I don't believe so. Again, the Mallinckrodt system, this was a while ago for me, so if they bought it at a wholesale price, had a contract of a price below that, when they sold that product to a pharmacy, selling it below contract wouldn't make sense.
I'm sorry, Derek. I have a transcript question. Madam Reporter, I think it might be if you could read back 81, the question by counsel starting at 81-21.
I think ours are different.
Do you want to go off the record?
Yeah, I just kind of.
Time is 11 a.m. We're going off the record.